sports cars that you should never buy. Now, buying a used sports car is one of the toughest things to do correctly. With all used sports cars, there's two main problems. The first one is people who buy sports cars tend to drive the heck out of them. So with any used sports car, you got to check it out to make sure that it's still in good shape. Now, a corollary of this is the resale value of sports cars is often rather low. They go for a rather cheap price compared to what a new one costs. And that's the second thing you got to worry about. Over the last 51 years, I can't think of how many customers I have who said, "Oh, Scotty, look, I got a really good deal on this used sports car." To which I will often respond, "You think you got a really good deal. Let's look a little bit further to see if you did or you didn't." Because as one of my customers bought himself a Porsche and thought, "Wow, you know, I only paid $8,000 for this shiny Porsche. What a deal." And compared to the original price, of course that's a deal. But what he didn't realize was that particular Porsche, hey, you're going to expect to spend $5,000 to $10,000 a year maintaining a used Porsche like that. It's going to need transmission work probably. Eventually it's going to need engine work. You're looking at big money repairs. That's why the used one was so cheap. So you always have to have a mechanic like me check one out before you buy it, of course. Here are 5 used sports cars that you should never even think about buying. But here I'm going to give you a little disclaimer. I'm not going to be talking about exotic sports cars or Italian sports cars, because really, never buy a used exotic sports car or a used Italian sports car. They are money pits when they're new, and when they're used, they're doubly so. So just stay away from all of those if you value your money. Now, the first used sports car not to buy is a Mercedes SL 600. You do not want to buy a used V12 Mercedes sports cars. Now, I have had customers who did, and only one of them was ever happy. He got it cheap. He realized, I'm only going to use this thing on the weekends for a knock-around car. I know I can put a ton of money into it if I have to. He was relatively happy with the car that he kept for 2 years. But then again, he only put like 2,000-3,000 miles on it total in 2 years, and it didn't ride all that great because the struts were all wearing out on it. He didn't want to spend the money to fix that, so he just stayed away from really bumpy roads and didn't take long trips or anything. And to him, it was kind of a lawn ornament, you know? But if you're going to buy something like that and actually drive it around, geez, the thing's going to bankrupt you. That's why you can find cars like that that originally went for $100-something thousand, and you can pick them up all day long for $15,000, sometimes as little as $8,000. But there's a reason you can buy them so cheap used. So stay away from that Mercedes sports car if you're looking at a used sports car. Now, the next used sports car not to buy is a GM product, the Pontiac Solstice. They were kind of cool looking, and they were fun to drive. They put little engines in them, but they were all souped up and they could really go, but they could also really fall apart. My customers that owned them, they either got rid of them as they aged, or they bought them cheap, secondhand, and used them for a weekend toy. And the customers of mine that bought them as weekend toys, they still tended to fall apart. It didn't matter if they only drove 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 miles a year. They still would just start coming apart as they got older. GM inherently faulty designs would come to the forefront and things started breaking. So as far as I'm concerned, the Pontiac Solstice, hey, it's another lawn ornament. It looks cool, you know? I mean, if you want to have a collection of cars and have them lying around and you look at them, yeah, it's cool looking, you know? And they were fun to drive around. You go around the block a couple times, hey, it looks cool. But it's not something that you want to buy used and expect to get a lot of life out of. Now, the next used car not to buy is the Porsche 911 M96. Really, I wouldn't advise anybody to buy any kind of Porsche secondhand because of their high parts costs, high repair labor because of their crazy design, and basically they do have a tendency of falling apart as they age. Hey, it had serious engine problems. They didn't build the internals right, and a lot of the engines blew out. And if you want to price a new engine in a Porsche, whew, you better have some money in your bank account. I would have to say with the Porsche 911s, that's probably the worst used sports car you could possibly buy. From my own customer's experience, I've had quite a few of them say, hey, look, Scotty, I got a great deal on this 911 Porsche. And then if they keep it for a year or 2 or 3 years, and they total what they have to spend on it, or what they will have to spend if they want it to run right, they're like, oh man, kicking myself for buying that thing. I even had one customer who bought one new and then kept it for decades thinking, I'm not going to drive it much. After decades, he had like 20,000 miles on the car. And he thought, oh, it's going to be worth money one day. Then he went to try to sell it when it was old. And he was old too. And he found out nobody wanted to pay any serious money for that thing. Everybody knows how much money it costs to fix them. And when it was that old, all the rubber parts went out, the AC went out, steering bushings went out. I mean, those are expensive cars to maintain. And buying a used one is probably the worst decision anyone could ever make. Now, the next used sports car not to buy is the Dodge Challenger, especially the 2013 to 2014 model. Consumer Reports, they said that it didn't even complete their reliability test, the 2013 to 2014 Challengers. Yes, they have a lot of horsepower, big V8 engines that are screamers. They are a Chrysler product, and they do have a tendency of falling apart as they age. People are always doing burnouts in them. The people who buy those cars with the big V8 engines, they drive the heck out of them. They probably get the most abuse of any sports car out there. If you're buying a used one, you're taking a gigantic gamble that the thing is going to last and it's not on its final legs already. If you really have the hots for one of those, lease the thing. Then you know what you're going to pay out. You're leasing the vehicle. It's not something long term. You can have some fun with it. But buying a used one, whoo-wee, is that a gamble? My advice with that one is get an older one, maybe from the 60s. That at least will hold its value. You take care of it. If you like it, you can keep it forever. If you don't, you could sell it if you get it at a good price. The modern ones, woo, their values go down fast. Now, the last used sports car I'd advise you never to buy is the Audi S5. Yes, another German car, isn't that surprising? Now, I've had a lot of customers that were lured and thought they'd buy one of those used because of the prices. A new one, when it went for $54,000, hey, it loses over $34,000 of its value if it's 4 or 5 years old. So they thought, hey, I can get a $54,000 car for $20,000. And it looks fantastic. And it may handle and ride really well, at least for the time being. They are endless money pits as they age. Price some of the parts at an Audi dealership. At least here in the United States, it's not that easy to get aftermarket parts that are any good for Audis. They don't sell enough of each model, like Toyota. She used to sell millions of Camrys, Corollas, aftermarket parts. They're all over the place. But with the Audis, you're often stuck to dealer-only parts, where they just stick it to you with an unbelievable price tag, and then half the time they don't even have it in stock. You got to order it and wait. As an example, I was working on one time, and I found out it needed a fuel pressure regulator, a little bitty thing, you know, it should be 80, 90 bucks max, right? So I go in and they say, well, we don't sell the fuel pressure regulator as a separate part. You got to buy this whole assembly for $900 something. And this was on a customer's car who, of course, bought the thing used and thought he got a deal. Well, at least I got it to run decently. I didn't put the part on. It was so expensive. And he just sold the car. He said, I can see it's a money pit. And he got rid of the car. And since he bought it used, he only lost like $3,000, $4,000. So that's a cheap lesson to be learned about not buy one of these Audis in the first place when they're used. So hopefully now I've saved you guys a whole bunch of money and grief by telling you which used sports cars that you should just run away from if you're ever thinking about buying one. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.